Hey guys, welcome to today's Vehicle Visionary. You already know by the title of the video what we're doing today. There are a lot of videos on YouTube on the Aston Martin Vantage and of course on the Audi R8. But the question that I want to answer today, and I can't wait to see the comments that I get from a lot of you that are going to say, I could never afford one of those. Well, just pretend. And by the end of the video, tell me which one of these models that you believe would be the best daily driver of the two, and tell me why. And of course, that's going to vary on a lot of things, where you live, a lot of different things like that. But let's talk about exactly what each is and how it can actually be used as a practical daily driver. Okay, let's start with the Aston Martin. The interior isn't really cramped. There's actually a reasonable amount of space in there for the driver and the passenger. The seats are very comfortable. And one thing that's interesting about both vehicles is they're both, well, sort of mid-engine vehicles. And while you may not expect the Aston Martin, if you don't know much about these, to be referred to as a mid-engine vehicle, let me tell you exactly what I mean about that. The engine found under the hood of this Aston Martin is the 4-liter twin turbocharged V8. It puts out 503 horsepower and 505 pound-feet of torque. An estimated gas mileage, something that would be very important for a daily driver, depending on the commute that you have or the distance of the commute, is going to be 18 miles per gallon city and 24 highway, at least estimated. Now, how is this a mid-engine car? It's obviously a front-engine vehicle, but it's what's called a front mid-engine car. And as you can see by the engine placement, it's actually behind the front axle instead of over it. So that actually pushes it as far back as possible and gives the best weight balance that is available. 8-speed automatic transmission in this particular case, but there is the 7-speed manual that's available if you want to shove in the clutch and row your own gears. Now, one big difference here, obviously being low to the ground, you probably aren't going to want to use this as a daily driver in an area where you get a lot of snow and ice, which we actually had around here earlier in 2021 here in Northwest Louisiana. And people who had vehicles that were not as low to the ground as either of what we're looking at today were having problems when everything froze up. And then you had the tracks down the middle of the road, and obviously you had the ice in the center that was a little bit higher, and it was actually tearing pieces and parts out from underneath the cars. But one thing that would definitely detract me from wanting to drive on snow and ice, well, anywhere in this Aston Martin, is the fact that it is rear-wheel drive. But I do like the fact that when you look down the side of the car, you're going to see that the fenders on the rear are flared out. You've got a wider rear tire than you do on the front. In fact, those almost look like some kind of racing slick, maybe a street slick we should say. In the sport of drag racing, getting traction is going to be no problem in the right conditions, of course. Now, one thing you might notice if you don't live in the United States and you're watching this video is these pieces right here. Basically, they're almost like bumpers. That is something that is mandated in the United States by the DOT. You might not see that in other countries, but here's where the Aston Martin is definitely going to shine as a potential daily driver over the Audi R8. 12.4 cubic feet of cargo space. Like I said, that's a lot of space. You could haul a lot of groceries or whatever you want back here, just about. Well, maybe I shouldn't say whatever you want, but whatever will realistically fit. But there is more than enough space back here to take care of daily needs. Heck, you could stick your briefcase back here or whatever you need for your day at the office. Tell me what you would put back here in the rear cargo area of your Aston Martin. And just to show you, it's very easy to get in and out of this Aston Martin Vantage. In fact, it's probably a little bit easier than a lot of other high-performance sports cars and even supercars that I've featured here in the past on the Vehicle Visionary YouTube channel. Seats are nice and comfortable. The bolstering is good. It's not too tight on me, but depending on who you are, it might be, but that's okay. The seats are comfortable regardless. They look very nice. Got that Vantage logo here stitched into the seat back. And let's just fire things up while we're here And one thing that's interesting that might take a little bit of getting used to, depending on what you're used to, is that you have a lot of controls right here. And it might look a little challenging at first to navigate everything, but it's really not once you kind of just look around a little bit as far as where the air conditioning controls are. You've got heated seats, which is one thing that I was kind of surprised at with the price point where this car falls, whether you buy it brand new or buy it used as the owner of this one. Heated seats only. Here in Northwest Louisiana, even here in mid to late September, we still need ventilated seats. You've got all the different controls here. A very interesting look here for the shifter. If it's not something you're used to seeing, you have the shifter controls here, just buttons basically for reverse, park, neutral, and drive, all surrounding the ignition right here in the center. And of course, all of the other controls and features here. And of course, some of the controls here in the center may look a little bit like Mercedes-Benz. In fact, the engine itself may even sound like an AMG motor because, well, that's basically what it is. And everything easy to get to. You've got the infotainment screen here, of course, all the typical features and functionality. One thing that I have looked for on all sorts of cars that I've reviewed over the last few years is something to do with the shifter paddles. And that is the fact that on pretty much every car I've ever done in the past that has them, when you move the steering wheel, the shifter paddles move with the steering wheel. Not in this case because they're not actually part of the steering wheel itself. They're more part of the steering column. And these are very large shifter paddles for gearing up and gearing down. And no matter where the steering wheel is, the shifter paddles remain in the same place. I really like that. Okay, if you were to guess, of course, this being a true mid-engine car, because you've got a frunk right here. If you didn't know what that was called, that is a front trunk. What kind of space do you have here? 8 cubic feet. So not a massive difference, about 4 cubic feet difference between the two, but there is still some space here, but definitely not quite as much. And there also is a little bit of interior space where you can store things between the seats for the driver and passenger. I'll show you that on the screen real quick. But of course, the biggest difference is going to be what you're going to spend on gas, because under the bonnet, we'll say, of this model, well, it's not a V8, it's a V10. Now, obviously, you can tell by looking at the size of the exhaust pipes here and listening to this quick engine clip. That obviously the 5.2 liter V10 under the hood here, or bonnet, like we said earlier, is going to drink a lot more fuel than the V8 in the Aston Martin. 620 horsepower and 428 pound-feet of torque. It's not hurting for horsepower. In this case, you have a 7-speed automatic dual clutch transmission. So, and by the way, if you're wondering, what is a dual clutch or a double clutch transmission? Basically, it's just best described as a computer-controlled manual transmission. Did you know that? Tell me down in the comments if it's the first time you've actually heard that. Now, if you're looking for a little bit more of a racy flair, not only with the obvious difference in horsepower and acceleration capabilities with the R8, you also have some differences here with how you basically manage the car. And what I mean by that is, well, number one, let's fire up the engine with the button here on the steering wheel. And of course, there are adjustments you can make here with the exhaust on the steering wheel. You can change your driving modes. There's quite a few things, obviously, that you can do. And the seats here are about the same as far as the bolstering goes between the two cars, but very comfortable, that's for sure. One thing you might notice, if maybe you're used to the infotainment screen being here in the center of the dashboard, well, don't worry, you still have a rear view camera. Just everything is going to come up here right on the dashboard, right in front of the driver, which I think is actually a very good thing, instead of having to really look over here. Not that it really matters that much, but I know for myself, I still am looking at the side view mirrors when I'm backing up and doing all that kind of stuff. Air conditioning controls right here, and everything's pretty easy to figure out as far as how you manage the car via the buttons and all that kind of stuff here. The cup holders are located here in the center where you would normally expect to find your console. And of course, well, I can't really tell you that you can fit any Vehicle Visionary t-shirts in there, but you could fit them back here in this little storage area that I mentioned about earlier that is located between the two seats. And well, honestly, you could probably fit a good 3 to 5 in there if you folded them just right. But the obvious question to be answered here is, what do they both like to drive? Not that that really matters that much in the overall daily driving experience, but I still have to take them both on a test drive. Obviously, the big difference between the two is going to be the fact that the Aston Martin Vantage is rear-wheel drive. If you are in a situation where maybe all-wheel drive would be more helpful and useful, the Audi R8 is going to be the best choice. And while both cars are fast, of course, with more horsepower, the R8 definitely wins out. For me personally, you can definitely tell the difference in acceleration, not only because of the difference between the drive systems. With all-wheel drive, obviously it's going to pull a lot harder. Even if they had the same amount of horsepower, you'd still get more of a pushback in the seat just because of overall traction capabilities between the two cars. But here is an interesting point that definitely stands out. When it came to dropping the loud pedal between the two cars, the Audi R8 felt more stable on the road. Okay, now I want to hear from you. And remember, let's not worry about whether you could really afford one of these or not. Based on what I've shown you today, tell me, would you choose the Aston Martin as your daily driver? Or would you choose the all-wheel drive Audi R8? Well, obviously, that's going to depend on a lot of different things, where you live, and like I said earlier, whether it snows or not, all that kind of stuff. And if you didn't get more than a little bit of snow on the ground every year, well, obviously the R8 would be a great choice because, well, it's all-wheel drive, and the Aston Martin is rear-wheel drive. And for me personally, which one would I choose? I'd choose the R8 for myself, and here's why. I don't need to haul a whole lot around. So honestly, that would work for me. But I'm curious to know what your answers are down in the comments section. And like I said, just pretend that money isn't an issue. So, gotta say a special thanks to each and every one of you for taking the time to watch today and give me the opportunity to give you a vision for your next vehicle. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to check out another of the videos that's on the screen right now, and I'll see you there.